So we were discussing that what is the difference between census and survey. The census covers the whole population and we know the actual parameters of the population. You must remember P for population and P for parameter. And during surveys, we take the sample from the census, which is a representative sample. It means we want to take a sample which has all the characteristics of the total population. If the sample is not representative of the total population, then the statistics calculated from the sample cannot be applied as a result of the population survey. So it is very, very important to understand that census covers the whole population. Survey covers a smaller proportion of the population. Census contains all the exact information of the total population. Sample is always, which is taken for the survey, is always a representative of the population. But for a researcher, it can be that the sample can be biased and it is not representative. In that case, the results which are obtained from the sample cannot be applied on the total population. So usually during the two census, there is a gap of 10 years and the demographic investigators want to conduct surveys to know the changes in the population which have occurred during these 10 years. There are two types of census, de jure and de facto. Actually, the de facto means that counting the people who are present at the time of the counting in that household. It means when a surveyor goes and want to know that what is the total population which is residing in that particular household, the exact number of the population which has stayed in that household will be counted. And those who are away from that household, although they are part of that household because of education or because of the employment opportunities, will not be counted under that household in de facto census. In case of de jure census, which is actually calculating the total number of households which are residing there and which are part of that household, actually reflects the total count of that household. In case of de facto, there is a smaller disadvantage that it does not give the true representation and the true picture of the total population of that household, because the immigrant population is not counted there, which has gone for opportunities of education, employment, or any other, or because of marriage, etc., etc. But in de facto, there is another disadvantage that all those who have come in that household as a guest, or they have come only for a specific time period, they are also counted. So there is misrepresentation of the total population of that household. De jure is a better assessment way of conducting census, because it tells us about the usual residents of that household, whether they have gone out or they are currently not present in that household, but they are part of that household, so they will be counted in that particular household. In Pakistan, we basically rely on de jure type of census. In Pakistan, actually 6 censuses have been conducted. The first one was conducted soon after its existence in 1951. Then after 10 years, 61. In 1971, Bangladesh was separated from the Western unit. So a census was delayed for 1 year and it was conducted in 1972. The fourth census was conducted in 1981, and then there was a gap of almost 18 to 19 years. The fifth census was conducted after almost 19 years. Unfortunately, the sixth census was delayed for more than 25 years. And currently, the sixth census has been conducted in 2017, and we project all the statistics which are obtained from that sample. And according to that census, in 2017, the current population of Pakistan is 207 millions. The de jure, as I have already mentioned, the de jure type of census was opted by the government of Pakistan, school teachers were hired and they were trained, and they visited different households to collect the total number of households which are part of that household, which comes under the JOR system. Another important characteristic of this census was that because of the terrorist attack, the census was accompanied by the army men, and because of this, for the reasons of the safety and security of the people who were collecting statistics, army men accompanied them, and it was a successful census, and even the international organizations have supported that the census was actually true representative, and the population has been counted in real sense. There are other surveys which are conducted, and a recent survey which was conducted and published and has published its report on 15th March 2020 showed that Pakistan's current population at 15 March 2020 is 219 million um, mm, population. The mid-year population will be 220 million. It shows that Pakistan contains 2.83% of the total world's population. According to USA statistics, Pakistan ranks fifth with the highest dependency ratio. It means that majority of the population is dependent on the earning group in Pakistan, and a larger proportion is dependent on a single earning member. Population density has been estimated as 287 per kilometer square, and the urban population is estimated to be 35.1. The median age of Pakistani population is estimated as 22.8 years according to USA statistics. Again, it shows that not only the national demographic surveys, but the international demographic surveys take samples and they calculate statistics which are projected during the 10 years of the during the conducted two last census in the between the 10 years of two census. It represents the total data. Another sharing which should be done with you is regarding the report of the World Bank, which shows that Pakistan GDP is 27 billion, and its GDP per capita is about $1,437. It shows that the military expenditure is about 3.6% of the total GDP. It shows that the 29.5% of the population is living under the poverty lines. It shows that 90% of the rural population has access to safe water, 64% has access to the sanitation facilities. There are about 3.3 million females who do not go to the school at the primary age, and 2.3 million male population does not go to the school. So multiple international and national organizations conduct surveys and they calculate statistics to represent the populations of different countries. When we talk about census, there are basically three different phases in which census are conducted. These are pre-enumeration, which is known as the planning phase of the census, and then we have enumeration phase in which the actual counting takes place, and then the post-enumeration phase where the statistics are calculated, the tables are generated, frequency tables are generated, and we actually come to conclusions, reports are generated, and then they are disseminated. During planning phase, which is pre-enumeration phase, the government decides about the design of the census, that whether it will be de jure or de facto design. They develop questionnaires for the collection of the data and for the collection of the census information, and then these questionnaires which are developed, they are pre-tested in smaller population, and if the government of Pakistan feels that there are certain hitches or there are certain miscalculations, then the questionnaire is reformulated. The designs remains the same, but the question is reformulated and it is pre-tested again, and once it is approved, then it is ready for the enumeration process. During the planning phase, it is also considered that what should be the logistic assessment and what should be the amount of manpower which will be involved, how much transport should be required, how much army men who will be accompanying the people who are actually involved in enumeration phase, and the stationery involved, the transportation involved, it all comes in the logistic assessment. Actually, in logistic assessment, we do the assessment about man, money, material, which will be involved during the census process. Then the documentation is done for each phase. Planning is actually put in the paper, and for each phase, the assessment is done. Manuals are prepared for the training of the staff. Marking of the areas is done by the delineation process. Blocks are made, circles are made, then districts are made, and preparations of maps are done. The majority of the times, these maps are actually done by the handwritten method, and the people actually visit the places and they prepare the maps, and then these maps are wet by the GIS system in the help with the help of the Google Earth, and then these maps are distributed. Staff is recruited at different areas, that this is your assigned area and you have to do enumeration here, and the actual staff which will go in the field, then the monitoring staff, and then the planning staff, they sit together and they decide about how the data will be processed, how the forms will be distributed from the policymakers to the monitoring teams and then to the field officers, and after collection of data, how they will go back to the monitoring teams. And then the all the planning phase is discussed with the government of Pakistan, and then if the changes are recommended, they are edited, and then the planning phase is published for the dissemination of the information to the population. Then comes the enumeration phase. The enumeration phase is the actual phase in which the people go and go in the field and they actually count the number which is present in the households. So during enumeration phase, the most important task is again the training of the staff, in which although the staff was trained in the pre-enumeration phase, but actually they are asked to go into the field, and the monitoring teams accompany them, and whatever they do in the enumeration phase, that how do they collect data, how do they talk with the population, how do they communicate with them, how do they record things, is monitored, and if there is any fault which is found in their process, this is there and then it is rectified, and they are requested to do this counting for at least 30 households, and then looking after their data, if it has no ambiguity and it has no faults in it, then they are declared that now you are fit to go into the field and collect the data. In the enumeration phase, distribution of documents takes place from the monitoring officer to the field in charge, and then field in charge gives their documentation to the field members. And after enumeration, these follow the same path, that the field officers give their filled documents to their field supervisor, and then field supervisor goes into the monitoring team. So it is basically the retrieval of the filled document. During enumeration phase, door-to-door convincing is done, and the enumeration is done. It is being supervised. It is being monitored. There are establishment of the control rooms which collect data on daily basis. They check that data, and they generate mails. They inform the local authorities, provincial authorities, regional authorities, and the national authorities that how the data is being processed. Then post enumeration phase, this is the most important phase, because in this phase the recovery of documents is done from the different parts of the country. Data is actually coded, it is entered into different softwares, it is edited if there is any fault which is present, and then the reports are generated, and these reports are generated in the forms of tables, in the forms of graphs, in the forms of different infographics are used for the generation of tables. After the report formulation, this report is disseminated not at the national level only, but also at the international level, and many demographic investigators sit on them and analyze these reports, And then they measure different indicators of socioeconomic development or literacy rates or health indicators or gender indicators, etc., etc. So, how do the Pakistan census takes place? That different at the provincial level, KPK, Punjabs and Balochistan, Fata area, and Azad Jammu Kashmir area, and the Gilgit-Baltistan area, and the Islamabad area was divided into different divisions. Then these divisions were further divided into administration level districts. These districts were further divided into tehsils, which are also known as talukas or subdivisions or kents, etc. And sometimes the districts are made temporarily on the basis for only the census. These are known as census districts. And then these tehsils and talukas are further subdivided into charges and subdivided into circles and subdivided into blocks. And the monitoring team is basically involved for circles and charges, but the field officers go into blocks and they are responsible for the collection of data into blocks. Actually, the census district basically composed of district or tehsil or taluka or cantonment or different agencies in case of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa agencies. Under the district comes the charge, which actually covers the area of Halka or part of urban area or cantonment, and for each district there are 5 to 7 circles. Then for each charge there are 5 to 7 circles. Then in each circle consists of the area which belongs to a patwari, or it's a part of an urban area, or it's a part of a cantonment. And there are 5 to 7 blocks in each circle, and in each circle there are 1500 houses on an average. For each block there are about 200 to 250 houses. So this is the division, that how it starts with a block and then it goes to circle, then it goes to charge, and then it goes to the district area. For 2017 census, the enumeration method was actually the de jure census was conducted, and the data was collected through questionnaires. Visits were done door to door, and the school teachers were involved basically in the enumeration method. They were trained and they were given the questionnaires to fill that data into it. The population count was done through de jure method, and all the persons who were residing in the country at the household level, they were counted. The only population which was not counted in the de jure method of population count was the diplomats and the refugees which were living in the camps. Another day was allocated for the refugee population who was living in camps other than the de jure counting method. Field operations were done by doing the house listing and the population listing, and the census was done in 2 phases. In the first phase, there were 63 districts, and in the second phase, there were 173 districts were actually uh, involved in the census method. So methodology which was opted, that for each block there were 14 days, and for first 3 days house numbering was allocated, and the team goes to different houses which were numbered, and the data was collected in those 200 to 250 houses in first 3 days. Then for next 10 days, Form 2 was actually filled on the basis of collection of the sample for first 3 days. And then on 14th day, the population was calculated on the basis of homeless population or refugee population which were not listed in the houses. And then there were 2 blocks which were formed, and for 2 blocks there was only one enumerator who was counting the households, and each phase was completed in 30 days, and there was a gap of 10 days between 2 phases. This is again to show you that in 2017, the census started from 15th March. So 15th March to 17th March for each block house listing was done, and it took about 3 days. Then actual enumeration took place between 18th March to 27th March, and it took about 10 days. And I will be sharing with you the form 2 which was filled during the enumeration phase. And one day was specified, which was 28th March, only for the enumeration of the homeless population. And then the documents were retrieved by the monitoring team, and they were sent to the monitoring officers, and then from monitoring officers to the cells which were established, and then they were collected in the Bureau of Statistics of Pakistan. This is the form to show you how the government of Pakistan has conducted census. And you can see on the right side, if you can see the cursor, you can see that there are number of households which are present. That, for example, in a household, if there are 10 people, considering that for each household, the male and the female, the mother and the father has almost uh, 8 children per family were included in that area. So there were other space which was also associated with it. If the number of population in that household exceeds, then 10 can be included. So with this, it was written that all the present and not present but part of that uh, household should be included, and only those people who were residing out of the country and have other ID cards, then the Nadras cards were not included in that part. Then you can see that there was coding done, that code 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, 9 was given, and the code was entered, not the relationship to the head of the family was included. Then the gender was part, and as you can see again, the process of coding was done, that if there is male, you will code it for 1, and if there is a female, you will code it for 2. You will not write male or female, you will code it with 1 and 2. Then for the age, it was seen that you have to write the total age group, but the most important thing was that for those children who were under 1 year of age, the coding was done at the 00 level or 99 level, which was actually the misinterpretation at certain levels. It was seen that it has affected the results of the population. Then the marital status, religion, language, and the nationality, the literacy. For the literacy level, initially it was discussed that the literacy level will be discussed, that all those people will be labeled as literate if they can read and write their name. But this time around, the census says that if they can read one sentence and write one sentence, and they can do some of the calculations, then they will be given the status of literate population. And then the total educational status, etc. What is the occupational status, etc. And then the information about the block, circle, and district, etc. And the other part of the household, that whether this house was their own or on rent, who was the owner, what is the number of rooms, and when it was constructed, what is the actually life amenities which are present with that household, and what is the source of water, what is the source of light, fuel, kitchen, toilet facilities, etc., etc., and access to mobile phones, computers, televisions, etc. And we will be conducting this type of survey again when we will be going to Sham Ki Bhatia. Majority of the indicators will be used in that survey as well. This is the English form which is present, but usually the form which was used during the census of 2017 was of Urdu nature. So during enumeration, it was monitored that the complete data for all households was collected, and it was consistent and it has no mistakes. After enumeration, the field monitor checked that it has been filled completely and accurately, and if there was any misinformation, it was edited. It was checked for internal inconsistency, that uh, if it does not go with the results of different surveys, and then for the inconsistencies, if it will found, the supervisor and the numerator has to go back to the household for clarification. So this was the total process of assuring that the process of enumeration was right. Important parameters were which were covered were that 100% coverage of the population was done during 2017. Unit of enumeration was each household. Enumeration of diplomats and foreigners residing in Pakistani population was done in separate terms. Each and every household structure was numbered and their data was collected. Digitalized maps were formulated with the help of the GIS system, and there were control rooms who were catering the complaints of the population and the monitoring teams as well. So, WHO and the other international agencies have also said that the 2017 census was a good census and it has representation of 90% of the population. These are the maps which were generated during the uh, process when the monitoring teams and the field officers go to different blocks and they draw maps with their hands and number them. This is how each block was bounded by the red color through GIS system, and then in each block there were 4 to 7 blocks in each circle, and the circles were bounded, and it was labeled that how the monitoring teams and the field officers will go into these areas, and they will check that the data which is collected is accurate and is rightly done. And it also helped us to know that if any of the component is missed, it can be tallied with the maps which were generated. So again, to show you that how these maps were generated and how these were shared with the enumeration officer who went to the different parts of the um, census, different blocks and different boundaries and different circles, and how they went there to collect the data. Again, to show you an Urdu version, you can see that there are the areas of faith have been mentioned, and the sources of water supply have been mentioned, and blue coding and red coding is done, and they were allocated different marks. So what happens that when the data is collected, it is entered, it is into the pre-processing phase, data is cleaned. When it is actually tallied, that the coding is accurately done, and if the coding was done wrongly, then it was cleaned, and then data was analyzed and different tables were formulated for the dissemination of the information. This is the logo to show you the logo which was used by the government of Pakistan for the census of 2017, for the information that we will count everybody in each household. This is to show you one of the filled forms which was filled in the um, uh, census process. You can very well imagine that coding is used for each person, and the actual information was coded and then it was used. And if there were some mistakes were found, the monitoring officer have corrected it. You can see it here. The corrections have already been done in the second phase. And you can see that 99 is the code which is given to the children under 1 year of age. Just to show you how our army has helped us during the phase of terrorism, the field officers, how the media has covered the census, how the census results have been generated in the form of different graphs and tables. What is basically the processes which has affected our data collection during census. Number one was the political influence. The government of Sindh actually has rejected the results of the census of 2017 because they said that the population which has been shown in the census of 2017 belonging to Karachi was a misrepresentation of the total population, and it should be changed. And why there is political influence? Because the resources are allocated according to the number of the population. There are seasonal migrations. Majority of the population in the hilly areas come to the areas which are of lower altitude, and the northern area population comes to Islamabad and Ahmedabad, and some of them come to the Punjab area. The seasonal migration can affect, as it was done in early March, and it was still very chilly in that area. So it is assessed that it was not a true reflection. There are certain areas which were impossible to reach geographically. There were multiple glaciers in the way of Gilgit and Baltistan before reaching Pakistan and China border. There are certain areas which are present in deserts, and nomad population resides there, and it is difficult to find out them geographically. Training of staff was a big challenge. The school teachers were used, they were trained, they were actually peak tested in the field, but the problems with the coding process were seen during the process. Collection process was a tedious one because a larger population was covered. Within a phase of 2 months, the process of data collection took place, and then dissemination and coding was a bigger problem. Data editing took about 6 months, and data analysis also took about 6 months to 1 year. So these are the factors which affected the results of the census population. So I'll end my lecture here today, and we will be delivering you lectures on time. So please be on time. Thank you so much for your attention.